Okay, we're going to call our meeting to order to April 26, 2022. This is a business meeting, Town School Committee, and I'd ask for a recess to executive session for purposes of performance, character, or physical or mental health of a person. The person has been notified in advance in writing and advised to require the discussion be held in an open meeting. Pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42465A1, have been so notified. Let the meeting minutes reflect that. Regarding sessions pertaining to potential litigation and legal advice, Rhode Island General Law 42465A2. Investigative proceedings regarding civil or criminal, Rhode Island General Law 42.4, and sessions pertaining to bargaining, it should say, pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 65A2 regarding the NK unions.
So moved.
I have a motion from Ms. Hildebrand. A second. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously, and we will be in executive. Thank you. All set? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call our meeting to order. Sorry, we're running a little late. Today is April 26, 2022. This is a business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. I'd ask if everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll. Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand.
Here.
Mrs. Hoskins.
Here.
Mrs. Lima.
Here.
Mr. Mather.
Here.
Mrs. Schott.
Here.
Brooke Thompson. Gabriel Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could call the calendar.
Tuesday, May 10th and Tuesday, May 24th are our next two school committee business meetings.
Thank you. So first item on the agenda are citizens' comments. I have the list here. Again, as always, we ask if you could please state your name and address, including the town, and ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. I think I have this fixed, so when this starts flashing red and then shuts off, that means your time would expire. I'd ask you to please wrap up your comment. If this doesn't work again, I will switch back to my phone. First person is Brian Odell.
Rhode Island, United States of America. Recently, I was talking to some parents from East Greenwich and North Kingstown about their kids' experience in our public schools. They were telling me about how their kids had fallen behind during the pandemic and lost their motivation for learning. Kids that had previously been outgoing and happy had become withdrawn and depressed as their grades had fallen. Some kids had turned against their parents and were acting out at home. The parents felt the schools had lost their focus on academic excellence and instead were more interested in social justice initiatives. What did they do? They pulled their kids out of public school in favor of a local private school. What did they find? First of all, they found that this new school does not share pornography with their students. That's right, no genderqueer, no lawn boy, no the bluest eye. They also don't utilize wit and wisdom books with stories of suicide, the graphic death of pets, gender fluidity, and adultery. They don't teach masturbation to 13-year-olds. Sex education is limited to 11th and 12th grade. They don't waste time with DEI initiatives. Instead, they teach a set of strong family values, such as generosity, charity, and service to others. Because of that, students just naturally celebrate the diversity in the schools and feel like they're more connected to each other. They perform no unnecessary equity audits because they do their job and stay on top of what their students need. They don't force teachers to examine their inherent biases and white privilege. Instead, teachers are coached on how to get the most out of every student. It's a partnership. As a result, teachers stay motivated, engaged, and don't quit. Academic learning is skill-based, not content-based like in public schools. In other words, the emphasis on whether students can read instead of what they read. Problem solving is a focus. In these schools, there are bathrooms for boys and bathrooms for girls. No debate, that's it. They offer an extreme range of extracurricular activities to help develop the full character of individual students. And in these schools, everyone, including minorities, excels. For example, at this one local school, 97% of recent high school graduates moved on to college. The other 3% went into the military or straight to jobs. 59% of students had a weighted GPA of 95 or higher. 44% were National Honor Society members. 47% declared STEM majors at college. The parents I spoke to say their kids are indeed excelling. They are no longer sullen and depressed. They are finding new friends and new interests. Their grades have risen. This all raises some important questions. Why can't we emulate that? Why can't we strive for those same kind of results here? At the last school committee meeting here, a student told you that the majority of NK high school students he surveyed feel unprepared for college. RICAS scores show only 63% of NK students are proficient in reading. Only 52% are proficient in math. That's fine if we're comparing ourselves to Providence, but why are we doing that? Why are we emulating what they are doing in Providence public schools with equity audits, DEI initiatives, divisive teacher training, and radicalized books? The results there have been disastrous. Why can't we provide a high private school level education in a public school setting? Parents would applaud that.
Thank you. Next is Katie Gabriel Black.
Hi, Katie Gabriel Imperial Black, 140 Burnt Cedar Drive, North Kingstown. I'm here in my capacity as a member of the DEI subcommittee to speak to the equity audit proposal. I have been at every DEI meeting since the committee's work began last year. I have closely examined the proposals and supporting documents and done my own extensive research. I also stood here back in March and urged you to push the subcommittee to reduce the cost. Today I'm asking you to approve the amended proposal. This is a rare opportunity for us to devote federal funds, which can't be used for budget items anyway, towards improving our already excellent schools. This assessment would help us to better understand the factors contributing to achievement inequities in our schools and identify areas of significant achievement differences with respect to gender, race, ability, sexual orientation, immigrant status, socioeconomic status, all the pieces of diverse families and more. It will assist NK in identifying professional development and educational interventions we can implement to reduce achievement gaps and enhance school success for more of our students and their families. It'll force us to be honest with ourselves about areas for improvement. Please vote in support of the amended proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Kalia Shmer.
High School Committee. Kalia Shmer, 383 West Allenton Road, North Kingstown. I'm here to reiterate my support for the DEI Community Assessment, also known as the Equity Audit. I spoke in support at the March 8th meeting. Tonight, I want to remind you that there was overwhelming support at that meeting for this audit to take place. It's popular and it is widely supported. I also want to point out that the reason behind the audit is not that North Kingstown is some kind of horrible place. There's nothing inherently worse about North Kingstown than other school districts that would necessitate such an audit. It's being proposed here because we happen to have community members and officials who see the value in it and who can prioritize that. Moving forward with the audit is not an indication that our town is bad. It is an indication that we value all our students, present and future, regardless of what they look like, where they come from, what their abilities are, or who they love. This audit is an opportunity to take an important step, make an important effort on behalf of the students in this town to ensure their education works for all of them. I urge you to approve it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Grace, I think it's Duffy, I'm sorry.
Grace Duffy, 88 Haverhill Ave, North Kingstown. I'm speaking tonight in support of the DEI audit, which is more than a diversity study. This audit will assess how the school department can better serve and understand all underserved populations in our district, including those with disabilities. Throughout my time in NK, I had both an IEP and a 504 plan. I was also in many honors and AP classes. In my experience, it was not common for students with these types of accommodations to be in these higher level classes. With this, I found that many teachers were not aware of how to work with me so that I could be successful in their classroom. Many times, I was blatantly denied my accommodations. One incident in particular stands out to me. I had been absent for multiple days in a row and had missed a lot of instruction in my 8th grade algebra class. Just to be clear, I was not out on vacation but had been receiving chemotherapy as part of my cancer treatment. On the day I returned, the rest of my class was taking a test. My teacher tried to force me to take the test with the rest of the class, raising her voice in front of the whole class and telling me, quote, "It's not all about you." Luckily, I was raised to advocate for myself and knew my rights. Denying me things like extended time on tests was illegal, for one thing. I was able to educate my teachers on how to serve students with disabilities, but it shouldn't be my responsibility. With this audit, I have hope that our teachers will be able to not only accommodate students with disabilities, but learn to celebrate our students' differences and learning styles. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lori Duffy.
Lori Duffy, 88 Haverhill Ave, North Kingstown. First, I want to thank Mrs. Lima for your leadership with the Children's Diversity Festival, book festival that we had. I spoke to many families from all over the state, not just North Kingstown, who really appreciated being able to walk into a room and seeing dozens and stacks of books of their children in their community represented. I was in a training today and I heard this quote, and I wanted to share it with you today. Seek wisdom, not knowledge. Knowledge is of the past. Wisdom is of the future. It's a Native American proverb. I'm strongly in support of approval of the audit. There's no way to truly say how well we're doing with our most vulnerable population without gaining valuable information about their services and, more importantly, what we can do better in the future. I've already emailed you all and shared my experience as a parent with a child with special health care needs and how the school did drop the ball many times, and it left me walking away saying, well, I can't be the only one to feel this way, and indeed, I am not. In speaking about my role as a clinical social worker who specializes in kids and families here in North Kingstown, I continue to see times when the ball is just being dropped. Now, I don't believe for a second that there is any intent, that I don't think that the school is trying to not provide services, special education services to our kids, but they are falling through the cracks, and we are delaying services at times. I know that North Kingstown is filled with caring, compassionate, intelligent teachers and service providers. So I asked the question, why aren't some kids getting what they need? And it has to be due to the ineffective, inefficient administrative process that ultimately leads to obtaining an IEP. Just this past month, a child that I work with was finally granted increase in special education services. It's been almost a year and a half since we started this process with this family. And now the school is saying, yes, we're going to get those services that we talked about almost 18 months ago. I advocated. The parents are wonderful advocates. We had a child psychologist that was advocating for services. And it just makes me wonder, like, how many other kids are we delaying services? And now we're being reactive, trying to give those services where maybe we could be a little bit more proactive and ultimately actually save some money in the long run. We know early intervention is really important. I could share many stories like this, especially for the kids that I work with who are neurodivergent, those kids who struggle with ADHD and executive functioning skills. It takes a long time to get some of them services. So again, I ask, how much money would we save? The audit can help us stop the defensive reactionary service response and move forward with more wisdom in supporting our special education students. I hope you vote in favor of it tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Michelle Gerisol.
Good evening, Michelle Gerisoli. I'm a North Kingstown parent and a resident at 635 Anaquatucket Road. In the past,
If you could just state the town, sorry.
North Kingstown.
Thank you.
Thank you. At past meetings, I've voiced support for DEI efforts, and tonight I want to voice support for ESSER funds being used for this audit. The town has a responsibility to use these funds to direct efforts in the schools, and the DEI study would inform these efforts with data and impartial counsel, such as that proposed by the Public Consulting Group. I also want to add to the discussion some county-level data and my perspective as to why this work is important here in South County. I serve as a member of the steering committee and a registered lobbyist for Washington County's Health Equity Zone. The organization is called Healthy Bodies, Healthy Minds, and is one of 15 health equity zones across the state of Rhode Island, which work at the local level on improvements for physical and mental health. Among other things, its efforts are to build awareness of social and institutional inequities that exist. Recent census data shows that in Washington County, there is population growth of people of color, and also poverty is affecting people of color at far greater rates than white people. On average, 8.6% of all people live in poverty in Washington County, but for Latinx, that number is 20.2%, and for Black African Americans, it is 33.2% living in poverty, 1 in 3 people in our county. This data is a staggering indicator of the work that needs to happen right here, not just in our cities. It is critical that social and cultural inequities do not stem from any of our institutions, businesses or government, but especially not from our schools. A recent statewide community health needs assessment in Rhode Island shows that inequities of class, race, gender, and sexual orientation can have detrimental effects on social experiences, economic opportunities, and personal health. And the pandemic exacerbated long-term health and social concerns such as food insecurity, unemployment, homelessness, and overdose deaths in Washington County. There is no doubt that our children are feeling the effects of these conditions at home, and it will affect their school experience. We need to support this DEI subcommittee's efforts and this DEI audit to ensure that we're taking every possible step to make absolutely certain that our school policies, programs, budgets, and culture advance equity for all students, improving the quality of life here in North Kingstown and preparing students for life in the larger global community. The DEI audit is the next right step towards that vision. Please vote in favor of this audit tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Erin Earl.
Hello, School Committee. Erin Earl, 170 Matola Drive, North Kingstown. I am here again to express my support for the approval of the funding for the equity audit. According to Scarla et al. In a 2009 paper about the value of equity audits, the goal of an audit is to identify institutional practices that produce discriminatory trends in data that affect students. Achieving systematic equality encompasses the transformed ways in which schools operate to ensure every student, no matter the learning environment, is provided with the greatest opportunity to learn. The information from the audit will provide you as leaders to have data to inform the answers to answer the following questions. Which groups of students are served well by our current practices, and which group of students are not being served well? How can we ensure more equitable practices in our district so that every student is served well? And what is the connection between the professional learning needs of our teachers and the learning outcomes of students? By not approving the equity audit for our district, it says to students, teachers, and administrators that we're not concerned about a good educational system for all and that they're alone to navigate these barriers on their own. I feel that the audit is an appropriate use of the ESSER funds as it was established as part of the Education Stabilized Fund, and the CARES Act 1 to address the impact that the coronavirus has had and continues to have on K-12 education. The data from this audit will allow you to understand if pockets of students were disproportionately affected and required additional support due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Having an equity audit conducted is an official and organized way to give voice to those in our school districts in a safe way. I can think of no better time to do this in such an extreme time of challenges in our town, country, and the world. And there is also no rule book on how to help students after a global pandemic. Part of your role in serving your constituents is to listen and seek to understand students' lived experiences so that you can use your positional power to make progress and change. I recently heard a quote that really had a significant impact on me, and it is, if your equity and inclusion work isn't costing you anything, you're doing it wrong. Systems show what they value and believe through their resource allocation, not their words. It is one thing to say that we want a great school system and that we care for all of our students. It's another thing to put resources towards tangible things that can make it better for school districts and have it be even stronger and better for all students. I urge you to approve the budget for the equity audit today and listen to the qualified members of our town who were selected to serve on the diversity subcommittee's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize. It was pointed out to me that I skipped somebody accidentally, and my sincerest apologies to you. Kathleen Layton. I try to cross off names, and I ticked yours by mistake. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Layton, 17 Pilgrim Drive, North Kingstown, Rhode Island. Hello, Mr. Waterman. Welcome to your new interim position. Thank you for taking on such an important role, and so far, so good. I think you're doing really well. Thank you, Mary King, for sticking around. I know that you have a bounty of information about the school department, and I'm grateful that you've stuck it out. You deserve and earn every dollar that you make, and I admire you. It's such an admirable position, especially for a woman, so thank you. Thank you to the rest of the school committee for being here. It's been a tough time, and I admire your poise and dignity throughout the last few years. At times, I think your jobs must be thankless, but then I attend a spring concert or a play performance, and I'm sure, like me, you're moved by the students. So I thank you for what you do. Your job is incredibly important, and especially at times like this in history. I know that school committees have been the battlegrounds for civil rights for quite some time, and I think that tonight you're making hopefully a very important decision in favor of approving the DEI community assessment, if I've said that right. Because that's really, that's what we're all here for, right? I would hope that's what you're all here for, and you're all here for is to better the students' lives. And I ask you to, block out the noise and just make the right decision and approve the DI community assessment. There's so many reasons, but, do we need a different reason than just look around the room right now? It's such a divisive time. Look at, who's here, who's on our PTOs. Like, we can do better. We can do better as a community. I don't know how to do it, and it doesn't look like the school department does either. So we need to be more diverse. We need to be more inclusive. Representation is everything. So personally, just to say, my 3 children each attended Quinnesset Elementary School, and they and I loved it there. Unfortunately, most of the time, my kids would meet another friend, and that we would become friendly with them, their parents. They would leave the school. There were different reasons, the school's roughness, that the child wasn't being, just strengthened there. But I think that there's an underlying reason. I think that there's so many things that we could look at, and let's do better. Let's do better. So thank you so much, and please vote to approve the DI assessment. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's Kier Kaminsky. Apologize if I said that wrong.
Hello, it's Karen Kosminski, 22 Matola Drive, North Kingstown. So I'm going to talk off topic a little bit, but not really. So as a parent and as a community member, it just feels like it's hard to move forward with trust if we don't really have a committee that's thinking about repair work and how to regain trust of the community. So trust can be gained or lost, and I think a lot has been lost over the abuse that's happened. That's all the information coming forward, and I would really like to see some efforts being made to regain that trust. So I am expressing my opinion that I think that it would be wise, it would show great wisdom if we were to have a separate committee that would be electing the new superintendent and not go with with you folks, the school committee, because I think that we haven't regained enough trust for that process to happen. So, and I would also, as a parent, I also want to just express my concern over the curriculum. It feels very sexualized, and I don't think that is helping to gain trust for us parents and us in the community, that this will not happen again, that we're not going to be supporting pedophilia in our system. And there's just a lot of damage done also to other students that feel like they were in close proximity and all this happened right under their noses. And maybe you're feeling that too. Maybe other teachers are feeling that, but I think that we really need to be thinking about how to do some repair work. And I don't hear a lot. I don't hear really much being said about how that's going to happen moving forward. It's hard to just move forward and create new guidelines when there is no repair work. So I would really like you to consider that and take that to heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Izzy Montini.
All right, Izzy Montini, 70 Bethany Lane, North Kingstown. Hello and good evening. I'm here to speak briefly tonight in favor of passing the equity audit. I'm very glad that after the last meeting where the equity audit was sent back to committee, we were able to reevaluate the funds more appropriately. These funds also take up less than 1.8% of the ESSER funds, making them extremely affordable. With this audit done by an independent company, we will be able to see and learn about where our district needs improvement without our own bias. Please pass this audit so we can ensure our staff and district is educated to properly serve all of its students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Susanna Tingley.
Hi, good evening. Susanna Tingley, 750 Hatchery Road, North Kingstown. I have 3 items on the agenda that I would like to address. First, why was Better Lesson chose as a professional development program when it's funded with a grant, federal money, taxpayer money, intended to advance literacy skills? Better Lesson is a racialized, politically driven platform with links that take you to social justice sites and the same professional learning site that Providence schools use. Better Lesson guides K-12 instruction in topics of inequity, dismantling systems, white privilege, restoration, activism, and has specific lessons for white students and white teachers to be anti-racist co-conspirators. The intention of Better Lesson is political propaganda, not advancing literacy. Second, why and who chose the Wit and Wisdom curriculum texts on the agenda? Are they filling a learning gap? Individually, these texts may have merit, but when taught as an entire curriculum platform, they're problematic. These books have repeated themes of violence, race, suicidal ideation, sex, anti-American sentiment, and gender theory. They lack rigor and support political activism. It's unacceptable for professional development and curriculum to promote a political agenda in our public school. Lastly, I'm asking you to reject the equity audit proposal. Did the DEI subcommittee contact all companies that bid on the original RFP, or did they only go back to PCG? All companies should be allowed to rebid. Our schools do not need an outsourced equity audit. Phase 1 looks at surveys, $8,200. The DEI can do this. Phase 2, programming and policy review for $4,200. This can be done in-house, just as the school committee has been reviewing current policies. Phase 3 wants to look at leadership and staff readiness for $10,000. Phase 4, student data review for $8,200. Have SIP plans been reviewed? This data can also be reviewed in-house. And Phase 5 for $6,200 looks at family and community engagement before even looking at the NKSD community. An outsourced audit is premature, and it is not the best use of $55,000 considering the current funding of the school budget. This money should be used to improve student achievement and outcomes, not to fund a political agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker is Ramona Bessinger.
My name is Ramona Bessinger. I live in Jamestown, 437 Davitt Avenue. I'm here to speak in opposition to this equity audit. It is a complete waste of time, a complete waste of tax dollars, and complete irresponsible misappropriation of those funds. The funds that you're using for this equity audit were intended to close literacy gaps, not to enhance political platforms. If you look at the materials that you have suggested that the school would be using, these materials are filled with complete and terrible political messages, white shaming, gender theories, sexual health, all of these bizarre, extreme political ideologies that we are seeing currently everywhere in the country. Parents are annoyed. It is not, public education is not your personal political playing field. Our children are not your children. You cannot instill your political values onto our children. Okay? If you want to do that, raise the money, open up your own private school where you indoctrinate children in your political ideology. Okay? I would like to say one more thing. Every single city where an equity audit has taken place has been disaster zones, okay? Let's look at Virginia, a complete and utter disaster zone where sexual abuse is on the rise, rape is on the rise, racial tension and division on the rise. That all happened because they performed an equity audit. Look at Providence Schools. It is a complete and utter disaster. The very, very first thing that was done to repair this already failing system was an equity audit. This was supposed to be the magic solution to close the gaps that folks here have talked about. It didn't happen. The gaps are even bigger than they've ever been. Teachers are, the whole system is in a complete disarray and chaos. There is nothing good. In fact, you haven't shown or demonstrated any data or metrics to show that this equity audit will work. That $73,000 price tag is just the beginning. You are wasting federal funds. You are misappropriating federal funds. The money should go to help students, all students. It should not go to your personal political agenda.
Thank you. So next on our agenda, we have minutes of a second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And I can disclose that no votes were taken in this evening's executive session. I skipped recognitions. Sorry, Mr. Waterman. That's what happens when you get up for a second. Mr. Waterman, recognitions. Oh, well, we do have a sign-up sheet. Normally, we ask that you sign up. Okay. If you want to speak, please come up, state your name and address for the record. My apologies. And if you could just make sure you state it clearly, because I'm going to write it down here. So.
Okay, my name is Ruth Peasley, 52 Yorktown Road, North Kingstown, Rhode Island.
Was it 52? I'm sorry.
52.
Okay,
No.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, okay. I just have a couple of things. I'm not too clear on this DEI or GEI, whatever it is. But my question is, if you're going to do that, and it's trying to include students, whether they're in special ed or not, or 504, whatever, I'm just curious about, are you going to go back to interview the students that were suggested that they withdraw when they turned 18 rather than drop out, even though they were covered by an IEP? Are you going to go back and check the kids that were told they needed, one of the things in their IEP was to go to class every day? But North Kingstown said, nope, can't do that every other day, even though the principal told me before September, yes, your grandson can go to school every day. Nope, that didn't happen. So I'm just curious, because a lot of kids, whether it's from elementary, middle school, or high school, and I know several of my grandson's friends, he as well, and his friends ended up dropping out because they couldn't do the work. They couldn't focus, they hands-on. Okay, and I'm just curious, are you going to go back and interview some of these families and include them? Because you might get a little bit of a different outlook on this and to be inclusive. And my second question, I don't know if you're still considering this. I know at one time you were thinking about having gender-neutral bathrooms. Is that still an issue for the schools? Do you know?
So citizens' comments are an opportunity for you to speak. You can speak about any topic you'd like, but it's not a question and answer session.
I didn't know that. What I would like you to do is just consider my 5-year-old granddaughter is a student at Quidnesset Elementary Kindergarten, and back in September, she went to the bathroom, and about 3 minutes later, the teacher heard her screaming because one of the boys crawled underneath the bathroom and went into her bathroom. and tried to molest her. So I just wanted to let you know about that. That's all the comments I have. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It's a little out of order. Recognitions, Mr. Waterman.
Thank you. I have one recognition that we just received today, and I'm very pleased to announce that we learned today North Kingstown High School is recognized by U.S. News and World Report as is the category Best High Schools in Rhode Island. Overall, North Kingstown High School ranked 4th out of all high schools. And one thing I think is very important to point out, while the high school gets the recognition and they have fantastic administration, hardworking teachers, incredibly hardworking students, the high school is a culmination of all 5 of our elementary schools, feeding into both of our middle schools, feeding into our high school. So a lot of times when the high school gets the recognition, it's really, I view it as a recognition of the district as a whole. So congratulations to all of our teachers, all of our students, all of our families. Thank you for your hard work in making North Kingstown High School number 4 for 2022 as rated by U.S. News and World Report. That is all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have the consent agenda. Do any members have any items that they'd like to exempt?
I need to exempt B1 and B2.
Okay, B1 and B2. Any others? C10. Okay, and I'm going to exempt, hold on one second.
Mr. Mather, you need to exempt B3. You weren't here for that meeting?
Which one was that? I'm sorry. B3 as well? Okay. And then I'm going to exempt items C1, C5, and D1. So if I could get a motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items. I have a motion from Ms. Lima, second Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. So the first are, you did them together. We can probably take them together.
Yep,
so I'd ask for a motion to approve items B1 and B2. Is that Ms. Hoskins? Second. And a second from Ms. Lima. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And
I am abstaining.
An abstention from Ms. Hildebrand. Next, if I could have a motion to approve item B3. I have a motion from Ms. Lima, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And an abstention from Mr. Mather. Next is item C1. I know, Mr. Waterman, you had some comments on this item.
Yes, thank you. It was brought to my attention today from a member of the community that there was perhaps some confusion regarding betterlessons.com and betterlesson.com, which, while they sound very similar, they are 2 different companies, platforms. The PD that is being purchased is from betterlesson.com, not betterlessons.com. It is just professional development. It is one-on-one coaching for our middle school ELA teachers where they set the goals. They work one-on-one with the coach, and they work towards the goals that they set together. So there is no curriculum being purchased. It is betterlesson.com, not Better Lessons. Also, the books that are being purchased are not any new additional books. They are to round out classroom sets so that if a class has a capacity of 25, when the books were originally purchased, if it had an enrollment of 22, there were 22 copies purchased. This will provide 25 copies to the class so that if a book is misplaced, damaged, there are additional copies available. So no new books are being added at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Waterman. So I need a motion to approve item C1. Motion, Mr. Mather. Second, Ms. Lima. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item C5, Mrs. King, I think you had some things to add.
Yes, I just want to be clear. I do apologize. I looked back at that ledge file and it wasn't clear. So what I'm asking for with this vote is that there is an approval to award 2 different items to Ken Vo Floor. So the first one is to take the main gym at the high school down to bare floor and completely refinish it. That's $31,950. And then the ongoing that we always do every year in the summertime is to refinish just the top coat of all of the rest of the gyms that are noted on that RFP. And that would be for FY23, $10,795, FY24, $11,974, and FY25, $13,242.
Thank you for that clarification. Any questions? Mr. Mather?
Yeah, quick question. Mary, the last three that you spoke about, the refinishing of the floors, those are those items that are regularly budgeted?
Yes.
So there's no effect to the budget?
No.
The only effect to the budget that we would be voting on is the $39,500 to redo the entire
Correct,
gym
and that
number one.
that would be covered under our maintenance line items.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve item C5. I have a motion from Ms. Lima.
Second.
Second from Ms. Hildebrand. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next is item C10. Ms. Lima, you had exempted that.
I did. I just want
Could you turn your mic on? Sorry.
I'll put a motion out to approve this one, but I just wanted
Okay,
to...
hold on. So we have a motion to approve. And a second from Mr. Mather. Thank you.
So I just wanted to note, Ms. King and I have had several conversations about this, and she's been very helpful, but I'm going to vote yes on this based on the fact that they've agreed to arrange for senior pictures for the yearbook to be taken at North Kingstown High School during the month of September. Going to Molino is an obstacle for many students because of finances and work schedules, and this way that'll allow people to have their yearbook photo taken here, and they can still go to the studio for a full photo shoot if desired.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. And Mary, I apologize for not asking you this earlier so you could prepare for it. But can you talk about the difference between commission rates and non-commission rates? And I'm not sure if is that something that we're voting on tonight?
We put that in our RFPs because it's always reviewed, but we go for the non-commission. We don't take a commission on that.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Any other discussion? All those. Sorry.
Hold on. There was one note, and excuse me while I stumble for it, but I believe it's Molino's. We might want to just look back at that contract because the annotated dollar amount is slightly different than the numerical dollar amount. It says 15, but and then annotated next to it says 18. It's throughout that whole column, so I'm sure it's just. No, there's two. There's the commission rate, and then there's the non-commission rate within the commission or non-commission. And hold on, I can find it.
I can find it. I'll make sure that we clarify that.
Okay. It's splitting hairs. It's a couple of dollars here and there, but,
but
it's
that's
just
important.
the annotation's
I'll make sure we look at
not
that.
consistent.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. And then for item D1, I'm going to make a motion to table this item. That's not going to be approved right now. If I could get a second. I have a second from Mr. Mather. So motion to table. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have the school committee approval of the DEI community assessment. I would pass it to one of the members of the school committee serving on that committee to give a little bit of an explanation of what the recommendation is before us.
Okay, I'll go first, and then if Jake has anything to add, he can. So as requested by the school committee at its March 8th meeting, the DEI subcommittee has re-reviewed the proposals for a DEI community assessment, otherwise known as an equity audit. The subcommittee met on March 16th and April 13th to discuss what items could be removed from the bids and requested revised proposals from both the vendors. The majority of the subcommittee believes that the proposal should be approved as originally submitted, but recognizing that cost is a factor that must be taken into consideration, the full subcommittee agreed that the following phases could either be eliminated or done in-house. The first one was Phase 7, which was the curriculum review for $10,250. The reason for this decision was because our elementary and middle school curriculums are new and were vetted using the RIDE culturally responsive framework. Our high school just received a waiver for the English curriculum, and the same questions were asked to guide that submission as well. The other phase that the subcommittee voted to eliminate was phase 6, which is workforce diversity strategies, which was $4,750. The DEI subcommittee and myself personally want to make clear that this was not cut because it's not necessary. It's actually one of our highest priorities. There is no question that NKSD can improve in this area. We believe, the subcommittee, that work can begin on this now, and the subcommittee will be focusing their efforts on this in the short term. So it's important to also note that the subcommittee believes that any additional cuts jeopardize the integrity of the audit itself. The cuts made represent a reduction of approximately $18,000, which is 25% of the original proposal from PCG, who is the preferred vendor. The new cost with the phases removed and adjustment to the final wrap-up as a result is $54,980 from PCG. We as a community have been hearing about this audit for months now. I honestly don't think there's anything I can say tonight that will make you support it if you don't already, but I just want to touch on a few things. The cost of this audit will not come from the school's operating budget. ESSER funds will be used to pay for this. The cost of this audit, pre-cuts, represents about 1.2% of the total amount of ESSER funds our district has received. This is not an either we do the audit or something else scenario. We can do the audit and provide support for students who are struggling academically. We can do the audit and provide support for students who are struggling with mental health. We can do the audit and provide necessary supplies. This audit is not just about race. It's looking for areas of inequity in multiple areas: race, gender, sexual orientation, ability, religious affiliation, etc. The company will be looking at district data relative to student academic performance, discipline, achievement, attendance, social-emotional needs, involvement in extracurricular activities, special education service, and English learner classification. Equity and equality are not the same thing, and equity does not destroy equality. Equity considers each individual differently and by their needs. Equality considers everyone the same and doesn't take their individual needs into account. Equity does not mean equal outcomes. It means making sure everyone has access to what they need to achieve. Increasing opportunities for one group does not take anything away from another group. I hear a lot from people in these meetings about the lack of documented instances of racism in this town. What does documented instances of racism even mean? Is it situations reported to the police, to the school? Many instances of racism and discrimination are not illegal, and they aren't things people would necessarily go to the authorities about. It's not possible to quantify racism based on official reports. What we can do is listen to members of our community when they share their experiences with it. When people have spoken up, they're discounted or not believed. I don't think it's a stretch to say that those two things are related. Why do we need an outside consultant to do this work instead of doing it ourselves? Have you ever heard the expression, a man who is his own lawyer has a fool for a client? Well, a district that believes it can be impartial about its own biases will never get to the root of the problem. Administrators and teachers overwhelmingly do not have a clear, accurate, or useful understanding of the degree of inequity present in their own schools and school districts. Work done with good intentions does not produce racial equity, or it would have already. PCG understands education reform must reflect the local context and political realities. PCG acts as an outside agent who has an objective perspective and works together with educational entities to identify challenges and provide recommendations for improvement. PCG believes this project and the results that will follow offers North Kingstown School Department a tremendous opportunity to support positive, equitable outcomes for every student. I recently attended a training where we were talking about data, the importance of it, how to quantify it, what to do with it once you have it. During this discussion, someone said that stories are data with souls. I have heard many people's stories regarding the inequities that they've experienced in our district. Regardless of what the numbers say, those souls exist within our community. I say it all the time that I'm just asking people to be open to the possibility that not everyone walks through life with the same experiences. Many families have had and will continue to have great experiences in the NK school district, but that's not the case for everybody. Why would we not want to fix that?
Thank you. Mr. Mather, did you want to speak?
Thank you very much, Jen. It's hard to follow up on that because you used all of the good words. I do want to just speak to the fact that we did, I'm also a member of the DEI subcommittee, sit down with the audit, with these RFPs and went through them with a fine-tooth comb and really did analyze them at a high level for what we could do in-house versus what we found value for in having an outside company with outside perspectives provide for us. That's really all I can say. But yes, these were looked at very seriously and with a tremendous amount of consideration over many months. If you remember, this was on the agenda months and months ago, and it's been talked about and scrutinized, and information has been gathered, and here we are at the table ready to vote on it. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Hildebrand?
Sorry. So thank you to you both. Thank you to the DEI subcommittee. We did have a lot of questions the first time it came to us, and I think that many of those have been addressed. Thank you for modifying, or to the vendors for modifying the timeline, because that was a concern of mine. The original proposals had an original start date of January of this year or something like that. So I do think, is that right? I do think that the timeline, the adjusted timeline, is appropriate. We will have been through some of our leadership changes and some other transitions. I think that was a little bit of a concern of mine. I did want to ask a point of clarification, because it did come up in our public comment tonight around the two possible vendors, and did you approach both vendors with the proposal to go back and make modifications?
We did. And I have.
Could you put that mic on?
Oh, sorry. We did, and if you give me a second, the other company did come back with a modified proposal. I think, don't quote me on it, I think it came in at around $48,000 with the modifications. But we did go back, even though at the last prior meetings the subcommittee had picked PCG, we did get revised costs from both vendors.
Okay. And I did want to point out that we did upload a new agenda packet, and I believe that was in there.
Yes,
but I did want to make sure that went on public
Yep.
record, that process was followed. I think that those were my questions. I am in favor of this, and I hope that it will move forward.
Okay. And I'll just add, as we discussed at our prior meeting when we looked at this before, we sent this back to the subcommittee. A lot of that was taking into account comments from members of the public. And I know we are very aware that not everyone agrees with this audit. We listen to you, and you'll see from our votes which ones of us agree and disagree with you. But we have certainly listened and taken the comments that we agree with into account, and that's the reason that we sent it back. And we now have a different proposal. So at this point, I think we're done with discussion. I'd need a motion. Okay, I have a motion to approve from Ms. Lima, second from Mr. Mather. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item is school committee funding of district-paid field trips. We'll start with a motion to approve item 5.1. A motion from Mr. Mather, second from Ms. Hildebrand. Anyone, just a quick comment on, just a tiny bit of background on it, Mr. Waterman?
Yes, so we're asking for an additional $10,000 to put towards district field trips. When the original request came in the fall, there wasn't much clarity on what trips would be available. So the number that was proposed at that time was an estimate. We're still, I want to say, even with this additional $10,000, there are still restrictions in place, places not available, trips that would have happened earlier. So this is still approximately half of what we've used in the past. I believe in the past we've had an allocation of $60,000. We were at 20. We're asking for an additional 10.
Thank you. And, I'm very pleased that as the world gets back to normal that we're able to do this again. And I appreciate, the budgeting of sort of hedging on how much to allocate, because we didn't know what we were going to be able to do. So at this point, we got a motion? Mm-hmm. Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I think I made this point before when we approved the first bucket of, or first bunch of money for field trips. It comes at an especially important time, given also that the fact that a lot of the PTO funded contributions to field trips rely on events and fundraisers that have not been able to happen. So this money is even more helpful right now, given that a lot of the PTOs don't have a lot of money right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, we have the school committee approval of engagement of recruiting services for the director of finance position. This is, just to cast as wide of a net as possible in filling that position. If I could get a motion to approve. Motion from Ms. Hoskins, second from Mr. Mather. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Waterman.
I just want to clarify that we are not sure if we will need to engage any of these recruiting services. Back when we had to start putting this agenda together about a week ago, the posting was still open at that time. We had a few applicants. We've had additional applicants. We have applicants that we are going to be conducting interviews on. So we left this on the agenda in the event that the applicants we review are not viable candidates. This way we're not waiting till May 10th to get this permission, and we have it. So we may or may not need to exercise this approval.
And it's just, again, to provide the greatest flexibility. So if it turns out that we're able to select a qualified candidate from the pool, well, and I don't want to disparage the candidates who've applied one way or another, but if the school department determines that maybe we didn't get a broad enough candidate pool, we have the ability to beef it up. So, and if we select one of the ones who's already applied, we wouldn't have to use this at all. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next, we need to appoint, at Jamestown's request, 2 school committee members to a contract negotiating committee with the town of Jamestown to discuss some concerns that they've had regarding the current contract arrangement. At this point, I'd take a motion. I don't know who would like to volunteer to do that. I need 2 people.
I'll volunteer.
Okay.
I
Any
will
others?
volunteer
Okay.
as well.
So we have 2 volunteers. If someone would like to make a motion, we can appoint.
I'll make a motion to appoint Jen Lima and Jake Mather to the Jamestown Contract Negotiating Committee.
And I'll second that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm sure you will represent us well. Ms. Schott, yes?
Make one potential clarification. Last meeting, Attorney Carroll said that this wouldn't, negotiating the terms of the contract wouldn't take place for another year. But in our reading of the contract itself, and we just need to look more closely, but the contract itself rolls over automatically on November 1st. But the decision to withdraw, for you to not allow our students to come or for us to decide our kids won't come, has to happen the November 1st, a year in advance. So it's a little unclear when the terms of the contract can be renegotiated.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that it's that we take a close look at that together.
Absolutely, we'll take a look at that. And I mean, one of our concerns always is simply, anything that I don't want to. The negotiating the contract isn't on the agenda, so we probably shouldn't have this discussion.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to clarify that, and we really welcome the discussion because as we've discussed, some costs just need to, the way that things have been set up just need to be relooked at.
Okay. And that'll sort of be one of those, our lawyer will talk to your lawyer kind of things, I think so.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next is, we've had a number of resolutions that we have been working on and we'll continue to work on as we implement various parts of recommendations in Attorney Olivero's report. So if I could get a motion to approve item 8.1. A motion from Mr. Mather, second from Ms. Hoskins. And just one point I want to make is, as I say that, this is, one of the many things that we've done in response to the Oliverio report. Not everything you see at a meeting. There are lots of things that have happened behind the scenes over the past, year and a half that have happened that you might not necessarily see. So just because you see something publicly happen doesn't mean that other things are not happening as well. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Unfinished business. Mrs. King, anything on the 2021-22 school budget?
Nope.
22-23 school budget.
Yes, I do have
We've
a
got some
couple of
news
things.
there.
Yes. So last night, Mr. Waterman and I attended the town council meeting in which they voted on the entire town's FY23 budget. The town council voted to accept the town manager's proposal, and what that means is that our property tax funding was cut from our request of like 3.8% to 2.5%. So that's leaving us looking at $761,000 that we need to cut from that line item, or from somewhere to get to that revenue number. And then the state aid number, I had really hoped that I was going to have an updated state aid number, because while we know that the state is endeavoring in the funding formula to hold harmless again for another year for changes in enrollment, there would be some minor changes in enrollment. Mr. Waterman, I have seen information from the Superintendent's Association that we were waiting for some updated numbers from RIDE in mid-April, and now it's the end of April. So I think that at the time that we bring forward to you the state aid number, we're going to have to see maybe we have an updated number. If we don't, I guess I'll have to recommend that we go with the number that was posted back in January. So let's say that we do go with that number. That means the net that we have to cut is about $500,000 before there are any other changes that we might have to make to the budget that we know have come along. Because don't forget, we started doing this budget in November. The first round got presented to you guys in early January, and it went to the town council at the end of February. And that doesn't sound like a long time ago, but a few things have happened in the North Kingstown School Department. So we do have some changes that we need to account for. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I'd really like to address the discussion of the North Kingstown School Department fund balance. Because every time I hear a number, it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger at every meeting. So information, if anyone is really looking for it, is on the North Kingstown School Department website, under departments, under business office, and you can find budgets under there, and you can find prior year audits under there. Our audit from June 30th, 2021 clearly states, and I understand that the financials are very difficult to look at, but what we've done is we've requested from the auditor to break the school department's financials out from the hundreds and hundreds of pages of the entire town audit. There is a page, it's literally page 1 of the financials, and our audited fund balance at June 30th, 2021 was not $13 million, it wasn't $15 million, it wasn't whatever number keeps growing and growing and growing, it was $6 million. $6 million, okay? From that number, $721,000 of that is restricted for grants. We can't spend that on anything, but that's basically where we end up with, all of our various grants and what's left over as of June 30th that follows into a following year. From there, the school committee has committed to $1.5 million, which in effect is our FY21 surplus, to spreading that over 3 years in our general fund. So $500,000 for FY22, FY23, and FY24. We know we've discussed that. I have a concern about that. That really sets you up for a structural deficit. And it really doesn't set you up for a structural deficit of $500,000 when you're done with those 3 years. It sets you up for $1.5 million because it's a cumulative number. But so be it. We have agreed to that number. That brings us down to a fund balance of $3.8 million. From there, and I understand this is not about, this discussion is not about if someone agrees with how the school committee has chosen to reserve the fund balance. It's a discussion of exactly the truth of what money is there. So from that $3.8 million, we then, every year, we reserve 2% of our state funding and our town funding from the prior year as what we call an emergency fund. And that is approximately $1.3 million. After that, we have almost $1 million reserved to replace our turf, maybe to do some lighting upgrades in the athletic facility and any other sort of upgrades or equipment, big equipment items that might be needed from there. We have another category, academic reserve, about $150,000. We tried to save some money for our fleet, which is our buses and our maintenance, of $150,000 also. We have $500,000 for technology, and so on and so on and so on. So my real point here is that the North Kingstown School Department fund balance is $6 million, of which $1.5 million right off the bat is committed to future year general funds. So no matter what you do or don't do with the rest of the money, we only have $3.8 million in a fund balance until we get through this school year. So it's really important that, you know, again, like I said, I understand that the financials are complicated to look at, but we can't just have constant misinformation. I don't know if it's done purposely, but I'm stunned at the amount of money that supposedly we have here every meeting that I go to. I also want to say, not included in that money is the food service, our nutrition program. They also have a separate fund balance, but let's be clear, that can only be used for that program. So Ms. Cawley is going to come forward. She's going to have to do some spending on that because there are RIDE rules on how much she can cover, 3 months of net expenses and all that. But the available to us fund balance is $3.8 million. I don't really even know how to be any clearer than that. Also, a clarification, when we send our large budget package to the town council, Mr. Mollis does not put our whole 95-page budget into the town council budget. He only puts a couple of pages that he feels the town council needs to see in that package, knowing that our full budget is posted on our website. I've heard a couple of people say that there's no detail to our budget and where is it? Well, it's on our website. You know, Mr. Mollis can choose to put whatever pages he wants to in there. And if you go to our website and see our budget, there are 2 pages that shows our fund balance numbers. It shows how the school committee has agreed to reserve those amounts. So the information is there. You might not in particularly like the answer or agree with how money has been, you know, reserved or committed, but the answers are there. So I would encourage everybody to please look at things or call somebody in the school department. You're going to get the answer. Again, you might not like it, but you'll get the right answer so that we can try to dispel some of this misinformation that just causes more trouble, and we don't really need any more trouble right now.
Thank you. On, you know, just my own little comment on that, just as we're talking budgeting and those numbers. I've always, you know, in my time here, been very committed to trying to fix the problem that this town has with respect to funding capital projects, which means putting money aside to fix things that break because they always break and they need to be replaced. And one of the prime examples, and you know, we hear this commentary at budget season every year. The people I'm talking to don't happen to be here tonight. They know who they are. But the simplest one I think I can talk about is our turf. We bonded, which means we borrowed money from this town to construct our turf field out at the athletic stadium. If you've seen it, it was an amazing accomplishment to get that done. We worked at it for a very, very long time. That turf will not last forever. That turf is going to need to be replaced. And I will do my darndest while I am sitting here to make sure that we have put enough money aside so that when that turf needs to be replaced, the money is there. I'm not going to be sitting here when that happens, but the money's going to be there. But that means our fund balance will grow because we have money in the bank. Why? So we don't need to borrow the money because it is cheaper to save money than it is to borrow money. But unfortunately, there is a segment of our community that sees that money and wants it back. You know, it should be refunded. It should, you know, the commentary I hear is that, you know, you have that money, you didn't spend it, all of these kinds of things, and it's a you know, willy-nilly piggy bank to spend on anything. That's not what that money is used for. That is the money that we use to fix things that break and fix roofs and replace boilers and do maintenance, because while this town council over the past couple of years has been funding to the tune of about $500,000 each year, our fund balance as well, which is a start, but it is nowhere near what really needs to be budgeted every year in order to fix these projects. So what happens? The money that's left over, it's not thrown away, it's not wasted, it's used to fix things. And what that means is that is money that we don't have to go back to the taxpayers for later on. So yes, you are getting the money back in that we are not asking you for more money. And it's an important thing to understand, and it comes up every year at budget time. So as Mrs. King, wanted to do a little bit of explanation to some things that we've been hearing at the public hearings and at town council meetings and things, and our own meetings as well. That's my 2 cents on that. So.
And it's important to note that, nobody in the school department can take $1 out of fund balance without the school committee's approval.
Correct.
So it's, like it's the savings account that you put aside for your kid's school, and you're not taking out of there unless you have approval. We are not allowed to do any spending from fund balance unless everything is bid appropriately, fully vetted, and gets school committee approval. So it's not
in a public
That's correct.
Meeting.
It's not a slush fund. It's not a side fund. And in the 10 years that I've been here, the school committee has been very responsible in ensuring that anything that comes out of fund balance is, aside from the decision that we had to make with the $1.5 million going forward funding general fund, anything else has been one-time items. And most of them have been capital items or purchases of equipment and large vehicles and stuff. So that's been very responsible. And really, honestly, it's really the only way that we've gotten a lot of capital stuff done because of the lack of a capital funding plan in the town.
And then just one last comment, just because it is budget season, I occasionally will remind people how the budget cycle works. So we're further along than the last time I explained this all. So at this point, the town council has approved their final budget, and they have told this school committee how much money we have. We passed a budget, but our budget and the town's budget no longer align. So what that means is that we now will, in future meetings, we will need to be aligning, as Mrs. King said, our budget that we passed with the amount of money that we actually have, which is going to require that we make changes because we have to reduce things. We didn't get everything that we asked for. And that will happen over the next few meetings, and then that will finalize our budget for next year. So, okay. Anything on CIP existing bond or future bond?
Yes. Oh, yes, Mike.
Yes, I just want to remind the community you will receive one more email from me tomorrow and a text message notification that tomorrow night is our educational facility master plan community engagement session for middle schools. Right here, we'll start in the auditorium at 6:30. Once the presentation part is done, we'll move to the cafeteria for some more focused work. Tomorrow night we're focusing on middle schools, and Thursday night, same time, same place, we'll focus on elementary schools. I've sent 2 emails out. You'll get another one tomorrow morning, late morning, and a text message in the afternoon reminding everybody to go look at that email. So last time you'll hear from me on this until May.
And this is that point in government where when a year from now something happens and everyone says they never knew about it and no one ever asked them, this is when people are being asked. That's the purpose. It's unfortunate that people sometimes don't get interested until they hear what's going to happen and then don't like it. This is the time to become a part of the process in the long-term planning of the district.
And if I may add one more part, there is a survey in there. At last check earlier today, we had about 70 responses. So if there's anyone else who wants to take the opportunity, it's asking about the strengths, the needs of the facilities. We're looking for input. We're going to take that input tomorrow night, develop some focus questions on it. So even if you watched all the videos, tomorrow night is still different. I did get that question a couple times. If you watch the videos, should you still come tomorrow night? Yes, tomorrow night is different from the videos. The videos are background information. Tomorrow night is to actually get community input.
Thank you. So next we have a couple of policies. I'm just going to make a point because, again, there's certain, we don't comment at citizens' comments, but occasionally the agenda item that we're actually discussing that people have commented on come up, and that's the appropriate time, I think, to respond to some things that we hear. When we're deleting policies, and I said this last time we did it too, it does not, so when we are, deleting a policy, it doesn't mean we're deleting the policy completely and not doing it anymore. It just means that it has been encompassed in another area and the policy has become redundant or covered in some other way. Not that we are, suddenly, removing safe schools, for example, or anything like that. So we have, does anyone have any comments, or do you want to take them individually, or do you want to approve them all at once? I mean, if we don't have any individual comments, we can just do them all at once, unless someone had a problem with any of the individual ones. Okay, then I'd take a motion to approve item D1, 2, 3, and 4. I have a motion from Ms. Lima and a second from Ms. Hoskins. And just like one more time, doesn't mean we are no longer having responsible use of technology when we, do that. It's just somewhere else.
It's combined with number 3.
It's in number 3 now, so that's what we're talking about. We're just cleaning things up. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. The only other items on our agenda are reports. Just as we talk about, to Mrs. King's point about our budget is not hard to find. If you have your cell phone, you can probably pull it up right here, right now. Likewise, with respect to financial transparency, we put out our reports in our agenda packets. You can see it right there, including a, financial report and the check register. That is literally, with the exception of payroll checks, that is every check the school department has written in alphabetical order, and because of a school committee member who asked for it a number of years ago, in numerical biggest to smallest, so that you can see where the money's going. I don't know how you can be much more specific than that. And then between those financial reports and that check register, there's very little information if you understand it, which understandably not everyone does, but it is there for anyone that wants to look at, whether it's in town government or whether it's a citizen. So. Unless there are any comments, then we've reached correspondence. Do you want to speak just quickly? Ms. Skin, I'll let you talk about the first one anyway.
Yes, we had noted at the last meeting, I wanted to make sure you had Jim Grundy's official resignation from the building committee. We're looking to schedule a meeting in May to appoint a new chair, and you will see some postings go out for some new members for that committee. And then the other report on here, the policy subcommittee policy review that we said that we would do. So we're looking at all policies, and there could be some policies that are newer that or just plain don't need any changes. But we're going to start noting that actually on the policy, and we will try to have a letter once a month or once every 2 months that says, by the way, these are policies that we've reviewed and we deemed that there were no changes necessary, so that you're aware of that. I suspect that some of our policies that could have been what's happened in the past, some of the ones that are 1902 or whatever they are. So we want to do that and make sure that we know that we've reviewed everything as we go along.
And it comes up all the time, and occasionally there's one I submitted because I realized, just from my own knowledge, that the law that a particular policy was based on had changed slightly and it wasn't reflected in our policy. They require constant maintenance, a little bit of pruning. It's sort of like working in the yard. You got to trim them down a little bit, plant something new, and review things that are necessary. And for some of them, as we know, they're going to require some pretty serious work and overhaul. It's all part of that process. So that's the end of the agenda. So I would ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Mr. Mather, second from Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous, I believe. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming this evening.